Let's start with Gerard, and then we'll just go down Mark and Peter.
Okay. Thanks for the question. In terms of where it is in terms of feeding into other people's work at the moment, this is just at the beginning of the process. This data is in fact quite new because we're just analysing still the data that we've received. But there is, and what we would like to do is to see how this affects how we try to drive the assistance from being emergency-based to addressing the reintegration needs. The point I would like to make from the original presentation, which maybe didn't come over completely clearly, is that eventually the South is going to lose the remittances from Khartoum, and the remittances are a lifeline to the South. In lieu of, more or less in the absence of a comprehensive South Sudan-wide reintegration process, though there has been a great success in terms of humanitarian and early recovery assistance, without that reintegration process really being focused, that remittances from Khartoum have made an enormous impact on the capacity of the South to keep functioning in rural areas. And eventually, if the returns continue in this way, with the males returning to the South, they will lose the remittances and they will lose that lifeline. So what is important is to replace, and I don't even believe, I would say that we're not even aware yet of the consequences of the scale of the return to the South, because this particular lifeline has not been factored in. There is still more effects to be felt from this huge number of returns than we're currently aware of. To replace that means that we have to provide income for people who are arriving from the north, because they have no other means. They are not farmers anymore. They have no other livelihood means, so there needs to be a focus to deliver those in urban areas. There needs to be the provision of, I would say, emergency income, paying people who return from the north to create the basic infrastructure that we need, which is lacking also, particularly in the returned states. It's correct, it's been mentioned earlier in the first panel also, that these skills need to be captured, and because they're lacking in the South, so there need to be programs in order to make the best out of the situation, which is that indeed the skills and knowledge of the people from the North is captured and utilized in the South. But that has a lot of implications that I'm not sure if people are ready to pay for. The skills profiling, it's not easy to capture the skills of the people who are returning from the north. It's not a yes/no question. Are you doctor, not a doctor? You have to be able to justify it, and you have to be able to quantify the skills that people have in order to be able to use them. It's a very complex process, but one that we definitely should be engaging in. I believe that there is a taste for moving from treating returns as emergency early recovery to more broader-based livelihoods and reintegration-based programs. But I think they also need, at this stage, because we're 6 years into the return process in any case, so these things need to be incorporated into broader stabilization programs, because there's more than returnees out there destabilizing the situation. There's ex-combatants. There are youth who are who are classically creating problems in some of the states. So all of these issues need to be dealt with now, I think, and more with returns, with a focus of returns, but also in a broader stabilization rubric, because these are the problems. The focus of the South will be on trying to maintain stability of a number of groups who can potentially disrupt that stability. Returns, I would say, is number one, because they are the largest number, but that has to be located within a broader-based system. Your question, sorry, I've written it down very badly, but I know I wanted to address your question. Sorry, the lady?
It was, what can the major donors do, the U.S. and the EU, to help the UN and international organizations be more effective, make the reforms that you suggested up front of the panel to be more effective?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I'm very glad you asked it, because that's really the key thing to look at these, to look at the program reintegration within a stabilization framework. I mean, I think it's too late to returns reintegration. It's kind of a bit like closing the stable door after the horse is bolted. To a certain extent, it needs to be incorporated into a broader framework, but at the same time, we need a sustained look at reintegration needs. What tends to happen, what happened in 2007 and 2000, after the North-South return program came to a close in 2008, is basically people stopped talking about reintegration anymore. If there are no returns actually happening that are visible, then the discourse, the support discourse, tends to go on to just basic services without taking into consideration the returns, and that's what happened, and that is what I probably will happen next year. If there is not a concerted effort now to develop a sustained reintegration program, that is not the reintegration that's sustained, it's the program to keep the focus on returns. But historically, that has only happened insofar as returns remain prominent and newsworthy.
Mark and Peter, thanks.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. Wendy, thank you for your very pertinent question, which brings us back to the subject of this conference, the scope for EU-US cooperation. Yes, we do have a problem, and it's not just EU-US. We have a very polarized environment in Khartoum. I'm talking about Darfur. Darfur is always more controversial than the South somehow. The issues are complex in the South, they're difficult, but we find a way to agree on those issues. For Darfur, I don't know if it's the genocide case or what, but somehow it's always incredibly politicized, and I think we lose a lot of time by finger pointing, and the splits are actually not just between one donor and another donor, although those exist, or between one UN agency and another, but within those agencies, there are the the more activist, militant type, and the other type that are more into policy of engagement and looking for. But we're very polarized in Khartoum, and it makes it a difficult work environment. I think that there's no easy answers, but I think the problem is also that we're always so good at operating in our own silos. I said at the beginning that us humanitarian actors, we talk to humanitarian actors. We have this thing called the humanitarian country team, and we come there each week and we talk amongst ourselves. But we don't make a lot of progress sometimes because, as was said earlier, we need a more comprehensive approach which deals with the political, the security, the development, and the humanitarian issues. So I think if we could maybe create a small group that looks at these issues together, I think we'd make a lot of progress. I think there's still. Sorry? Well, that's a good question. I think that's one of the problems at the moment. And that's not really for me to say. I mean, the UN is already convening groups. We have a principal donors meeting where we bring, where we basically do this kind of thing. We do bring humanitarian actors and donors together. We don't usually have so much the development actors there or the security actors, but there are different fora.